Matthew chapter 25. When the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the angels with him, he will sit on his glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate the people one from another, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was ill, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me." Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you ill or in prison and go to visit you?" The king will reply, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." Then he will say to those on his left, "Depart from me, you who are cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not invite me in. I needed clothes, and you did not clothe me. I was ill and in prison, and you did not look after me." They also will answer, "Lord, when did we see you hungry, or thirsty, or a stranger, or needing clothes, or ill, or in prison, and did not help you?" He will reply, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did not do for one of the least of these, you did not do for me." Then they will go away to eternal punishment, but the righteous to eternal life.
We like good things, nice things. It is wired into us. We are, in fact, geared to judge things good or not. Take, for example, books. Books are judged by their covers. A book's cover is the first thing a potential reader sees, and it can make a lasting impression. Our brains are wired to process images faster than words. Why? Because it is a sign of what is inside. Bad cover would signal poor quality. No, it is not fair, but we do not have time to read through the whole book, so we analyse the cover quickly to gauge whether or not something is worth our while on the inside. If the cover does not resonate with us, then we are no longer interested. So too with people. We are all taught, do not judge a book by its cover. But we do not listen to that. In reality, an inward difference to what we see on the outside makes little difference to our first judgment. A bad outer to a person, either looks or behaviour, signals to us the inside of the person is probably not anything special. If you see someone on the street, you make a snap judgment about them. We all know the first impressions are key and that it happens within a tenth of a second. So while it can be embarrassing and uncomfortable to make a bad first impression, we do not really care so much because these people do not mean much to us. Before the meeting, they did not exist to us. And after we leave, we may never see them again. So what about someone judging you? How about your cover being judged? Uncomfortable? At ease with it? Either way you feel about being judged, this is what Jesus is speaking about. When the Son of Man, Jesus, comes in his glory and all the angels with him, he will sit on his glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered before him. I guess the big problem with what Jesus is saying here is not that judgment is happening, because we all do that all the time, and it happens to us all the time. It is that Jesus is doing the judging. Jesus here sets himself in a place set apart for God. Thrones are where kings judge from. The first shock to me is that Jesus puts himself in God's place to judge us. We already know when God does the judging, it has a finality about it. Worse than that, the way Jesus describes it here takes it to another level of offensiveness in my mind. He will separate the people, one from another, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. I do not consider myself like a sheep or a goat. Granted, I am not, and nor have I ever been, a shepherd. My grandfather was a sheep farmer though, and passed pearls of wisdom to my father, who passed them on to me for whatever reason. I actually feel the Bible's idea of God's people being a flock, or of us being his sheep, or even of Jesus being a lamb, go right over most people's head. For instance, in Matthew 25, what has Jesus' judgment got to do with sheep and goats? What most people take away from this is that Jesus, who is like a shepherd, judges people who are like sheep, and they are put to his right-hand side, where they are judged not guilty of rejecting God in their life. Actually, I'm being a little harsh on Jesus. Really, this is a very clever story meant to show us the end of times. His story is designed to speak to people in a way that they understand. It is a difficult idea with a simple picture. The problem for me is that the simple picture does not quite work, because I do not know sheep as well as the people Jesus tells the story to. Why are the sheep and goats separated? Why are the sheep better than the goats? Why does one earn reward and the other earn punishment? What inward differences produces such different outcomes? How do I not be a goat? What if I am already a goat and I do not know it? In Australia, sheep and goats are easily distinguishable. Sheep are fluffy and goats are shaggy. Sheep have stupid, unintelligent eyes that stare right past you, and goats have beady, malevolent eyes that stare straight into your soul. However, throughout history, and still today in parts of Asia and Africa, sheep and goats are almost identical, and no one but a shepherd can easily tell the difference. So, in fact, what Jesus is saying about sheep and goats is that you cannot judge the book by its cover. Well, we do that, but Jesus does not do that when he judges. He has to look to an inward difference between people to judge them. Outward conformity, being part of the flock, is not what people are judged with. There is something that only a shepherd can see in us, and that unseen thing tells God whether we are sheep or goats. It determines whether God sorts us to the left or to the right. One of the pearls of wisdom that my father passed on to me about sheep is that there are 3 rules about them. Rules or realities, same thing. They are dumb, they are dirty, and they are smelly. However, again, the sheep of today are much different than sheep as people knew them when Jesus was telling this story. We have been breeding them in such a way as to produce fluffier, dumber sheep. In Jesus' day, sheep might not have been as dumb, dirty, or smelly as ours. However, sheep were synonymous with a single idea. A sheep's reputation was that they were dependent on their shepherd and defenceless. Goats, on the other hand, had a reputation for being independent, bad-mannered, dangerous and destructive. Actually, this has not changed. I lived in a house with a goat once. Well, he was in the backyard. He should have been. If you left clothes on the line, he would eat them. If you parked your car in the driveway, it would smash your headlights and then lay on the bonnet. And on that note, there was no fence that the goat could not climb, jump, crawl, or run over if he wanted to. If he stayed in the pen, it was because he wanted to be there. If a new person came to the house, it would immediately try and ram them to show dominance, and it would frequently do that to those people that it knew well, just to let them know it dominated them. Our goat disliked any form of landscaping or garden and would trample and destroy it every time. Sheep versus goat. Here is what Jesus' listeners heard. Shepherds protect sheep from their environment. Goat herds protect the environment from their goats. For us to be God's sheep, we must depend on Him to defend us. If we push, take, destroy, and bully, we are like goats. Sheep follow their shepherd and trust him to lead them to food, water, and safety. If they wander, the shepherd will bring them back to safety. Sheep separated from their shepherd and flock are vulnerable because they have no defensive or offensive survival abilities. A goat does not follow anyone. A herd of goats goes where it wants, and the goat herd follows behind. Instead of grazing, goats browse for whatever strikes their fancy. Goats separated from their goat herd will not return. So what Jesus' listeners hear is, if we allow ourselves to be led by Jesus, like a sheep is led by its shepherd, we will be judged by him as faithful, godly people. If we are going our own way in life, looking for whatever takes our fancy, we will be judged as not godly people. The story of Jesus takes a turn, though, towards a very human way of living your life as a sheep or a goat. Jesus focuses on who we help. This inward part of us is what he will judge us by. For I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you invited me in. I needed clothes and you clothed me. I was sick and you looked after me. I was in prison and you came to visit me. We are in a culture where the poor, the worthless, and the unfortunate can be ignored. There are plenty of books that we have judged by their covers, and that is how we treat them. Here, Jesus, the judge, declares, "Whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." Does this mean that when we help people, we follow Jesus? Is this a feature, but perhaps even the distinguishing feature of true followers of Jesus? That is how this parable is usually interpreted. At one level, I'm loath to challenge it because it is always important for those who know and follow Jesus to show their life in God with compassion, service, and self-denial. The Bible says a great deal about caring for the poor. However, look at what Jesus has just told his listeners about sheep and goats. Jesus is the shepherd, and we are either sheep or goats, dependent on him or independent of him. Sheep and goats, with Jesus or not. Two groups, one together with Jesus, one apart from him. Jesus insists that what was done by the sheep or not done by the goats, you did for the least of these brothers and sisters of mine. Jesus is not saying to do good things to everyone who is suffering, but to Jesus' followers who are suffering. The emphasis is not on compassion, as important as that is elsewhere, but on who has shown compassion to the followers of Jesus who are hungry, thirsty, unclothed, sick, or in prison. Two groups, one together with Jesus, one apart from him. Both the sheep and the goats are surprised when Jesus gives his verdict. The point is that it is Jesus who identifies with these people who have been helped. Real followers of Jesus will go out of their way to help other followers of Jesus, especially the needy. That is what separates sheep and goats. This is the hardest part of Jesus' story. We do have two groups, but they are both being pulled from the same place. They are both seen in the same flock. The shepherd separates them. The people in this story, like sheep and goats, are all from those who believe they are the people of God. All those in this story think they are Christian and only find out in the end the truth. We should give to charities. We should give to those in need. These things are not wrong. It is just not what Jesus is saying here. This story gives us two symbols. He will separate the people one from another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. The people of God will be divided into two groups. Whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. Brothers and sisters are the family of God, and we are to treat each other in the same way the shepherd treats us. Do you know one book that we do not judge by their covers? Our own family. Parents know it is easy to judge. It is far more difficult to understand. It is far more difficult to go out of your way. It is far more difficult to help your children when they are in need. It is far more difficult to be consistent in your love and attitude. It is also the only right way to live as a family. What books have you judged by their covers? Stop judging each other as Christians and help each other. Live as church with each other in the same way, if not more, than with your own family. That is how Jesus sees our togetherness following him.